how can we be so sure that some of them don't have other agendas?
I'm sure many of them have other agendas. But I think at the moment, the national project, sort of the consensus within the country, we take it for granted, but we have reason to believe so. The ease with which the eastern part of the country fell beyond the control of this regime suggested that there's a groundswell of support for the idea that Gaddafi can no longer rule or doesn't have the legitimacy to rule anymore. How you manage those other motives or objectives after he falls, I think, is an issue that Libyans will have to contend with. And I think the world community can assist them in this regard. I am of the mind that there's still a national project that Libyans have now discovered and are willing to fight for, and that calls for Gaddafi to go, some sort of a post-Gaddafi regime to emerge that respects constitutional rights and helps bring a measure of order and stability and respect for human rights. But along the way, we might have some surprises, and we might have people with agendas, not just agendas that threaten the world community, but also threaten Libyans. There might be calls for regional tensions to emerge. The AlJazeera-Berber divide with the Arabs might also be inflamed. All of these will have to be managed essentially by the Libyans once they can at least settle the first important objective, and that is pushing Gaddafi out of the theater.
Tariq Yusuf, good to hear your thoughts once again.
Pleasure.
Well, there's been tension in Cairo on Sunday night. Security forces fired into the air in an attempt to disperse protesters. They're trying to get access to the Ministry of Interior to collect documents linked to the Mubarak regime, which they fear may be destroyed. More on that coming up. Plus, anger at the Tunisia-Libya border. Ghanaian workers who've escaped Libya say their government isn't doing enough to help them get home.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
It is in the details. A look. A connection. The moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. The top stories on Al Jazeera. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi has just appeared on Libyan state television, appearing before the crowd in Tripoli's Green Square. Though government supporters have been rallying in the capital on Sunday. A British Special Forces team captured by Libyan opposition fighters outside Benghazi has been released. They were reportedly part of a diplomatic mission seeking to make contact with anti-Gaddafi forces. Well, with more on Libya and the fighting scene across the country on Sunday, here's Charles Stratford.
Their military hardware is makeshift. They fire seemingly random blasts at fighter jets that soar overhead. Their determination and resolve remains.
There are two things for sure. He's watching us now and he sees us. So we won't tell him two things. We swear we will enter Tripoli. Sirte is not a problem. We will enter Sirte. It's easy. Tripoli is the goal.
This is being described as yet another new front line. It's just outside the town of Ben Jawad, between Benghazi and Sirte. Opposition fighters captured the town on March the 5th, but were pushed back by the military, forced to retreat to the port town of Ras Lanuf. Wounded fighters were rushed to the town's hospital. From here, an opposition spokesman denied his forces were losing control of towns they'd captured.
In a statement to the Libyan people, the revolutionary forces confirmed that they are still in control of the on the channels is incorrect and is not true on the ground. And you journalists have confirmed yourselves that we are in full control of the areas we have liberated.
The closer the fighters pushed west towards Tripoli, the more intense the fighting gets. From here, it's around 150 kilometers to Muammar Gaddafi's stronghold and hometown of Sirte, believed to be defended by hundreds of his troops. The authorities are describing celebrations like this as spontaneous, after the pro-Gaddafi forces recaptured the towns of Misrata and Zawiya. And perhaps now a new tactic in the propaganda battle. This former minister appeared on state TV and said he still supported Gaddafi.
I do not hold any official positions in the government or any of its institutions, but I still pledge my full and unwavering allegiance to the Libyan revolution and its leader. I'm over 70 years and I have no further interest from earthly gains. I'm talking in a personal capacity. I'm talking as a Libyan. I'm talking to you in hope to say that all Libyans have a duty to come out and save the nation. I feel a moral and religious obligation to go beyond the pains and suffering and even legitimate demands for the sake of our national interest.
And despite claims Misrata had been recaptured by Gaddafi's forces, these latest pictures hardly bear that out. The town is around 100 kilometers east of Tripoli. Evidence of heavy fighting is all too clear. Anti-Gaddafi fighters celebrate on the tanks they say they captured. The enormity of the censorship by Libyan authorities still hides what seems some pretty big contradictions. These pictures seem to prove claims by opposition forces that they shot down a fighter jet near Ras Al-Nouf, something the regime would never want its people to hear. This rebel fighter is almost disarmingly honest about their military capabilities. He admits to never having used an anti-aircraft gun in his life. They have planes, we only have Kalashnikovs, says this rebel fighter. Whether the uprising is making as much ground as it claims still remains unclear, but the propaganda mirrors the fighting. Libya is essentially two countries, and both are telling two very different stories. Charles Stratford, AlJazeera.
Protesters in Egypt say they've been attacked by security services and armed men in plain clothes. The unrest started when the demonstrators tried to storm a government building to seize sensitive papers linked to the Mubarak regime. Ayman Mohyeddin has more from Cairo.
Outside the towering Ministry of Interior, they gathered, demanding access. But on Sunday evening, as the crowds grew, so too did the tension. The Egyptian military, under strict orders to prevent crowds from storming the sprawling security complex, fired warning shots into the air. The situation further complicated with the arrival of armed men, who the protesters described as former regime loyalists that tried to attack the crowds. Earlier on Sunday, the prosecutor general had ordered all state security buildings sealed. That decision came after protesters stormed the operational headquarters of the state